Hey everybody, and welcome back to another one of Mudflap's movie reviews. My name is Mudflap, and today I will be reviewing the movie Elvis. Let's get started. Elvis is directed by Baz Luhrmann, and it stars Austin Butler, Tom Hanks, Olivia DeJonge, Zachary Montgomery, and Maggie Gyllenhaal. So we start this movie off where we're introduced to Colonel Tom Parker, who was the guy who was responsible for Elvis's rise to fame. We have the Colonel just talking about how Elvis started out from a kid in Mississippi all the way up until his death in 1977, and how the Colonel was blamed for a lot of it and how he was made out to be the bad guy. So most of this movie was from the viewpoint of the Colonel, trying to kind of put himself in a better light than he really was. We just got to see Elvis starting out when he was around 10 years old or so, and how his love for music came to be. Growing up in Mississippi, he was influenced by a lot of gospel music. The way they sang, but specifically how they moved, like they were just crazy, like almost possessed in a way, and he took that, and that's how he became so iconic in the very beginning of his rise to fame in the 50s. As he got a lot of his moves from watching, gospel singers when they go super crazy and they're just really feeling the Lord, That's where he got it from, and, just seeing how Elvis started out. So my overall thoughts of this movie, I thought it was absolutely amazing. Austin Butler did a phenomenal job playing the king of rock and roll. Elvis would be proud. Just how they made him look so much like Elvis. The hair, the style, the way he sung, all the crazy outfits, his behaviorisms, like everything. Austin just completely embodied everything Elvis was. And then of course we have Colonel Tom Parker, who was the guy who discovered Elvis, and he is played by the legendary Tom Hanks, which Tom Hanks did a phenomenal job. Absolutely amazing. He's just an incredible actor. Like everything he does, he just goes all in. The moment I saw Colonel Tom Parker on screen and he was talking about stuff and how he wasn't a bad guy or whatever, I automatically didn't like him, just because I knew that he was a shady guy. Like, he was defending himself, he was justifying himself, and at the expense of Elvis's fame, health, sanity, marriage. All of it was for him, it wasn't for Elvis in the very end. I was just blown away. It was a really long movie, but it was well worth it, and actually it didn't seem as long. It's over 2.5 hours long, but I was so into the movie that it honestly didn't feel like that. I'm not the biggest Elvis fan, but while I was watching this movie, it made me think of my cousin Dawn, who sadly passed away just a couple months ago. She was the biggest Elvis fan that I have ever met. She had cutouts of him and tons of records, owned all of his movies, watched all of his movies, and I just thought about her during the movie that if she was still alive, that she would have absolutely loved this movie. So a part of me watched this movie Elvis just to honor my cousin's memory. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know about Elvis either. Most of that stuff in the movie was all new to me. The Colonel and how what his role was in playing into Elvis's fame, the stuff behind the scenes with Elvis's family. I knew all about the drugs and the drinking and how he just really lost it. The last 5 or 6 years of his life, he was pretty much a washed up guy. Like, no one really cared much about Elvis at the end of his life. His heyday was in the 50s and the 60s, but also a lot of the controversies earlier on in his life. In the 50s with segregation, the politics behind that, and then in the 60s with he's violating his contracts and he could get sued for millions of dollars, but he wanted to keep true to himself and he was his own man. Because there were a lot of times it seemed that the Colonel wouldn't let him do certain things because, he, in the Colonel's mind, he owned Elvis, but Elvis obviously wasn't having it. And Elvis, he had that rebellious streak in him like he always had, that the fans wanted it. Like, he knew, like, the Colonel, I'm sure the Colonel knew this too, but Elvis knew that he should just go for it. He had a lot of his friends from back home who couldn't reach the audience like he could, because mainly there was the race barrier. Like, if a black person tried to do what Elvis did, they would get thrown into jail. One of the guys, B.B. King, talked about, hey, I could get thrown in jail for just walking across the street. But you, a white man, you go up on stage, you can influence anybody, you can do whatever you want, and people will love you for it because they had never seen anything like it. I knew about the controversy surrounding him. You know, all the parents were pretty protective of their children seeing Elvis move like that because they had never seen anything like that. I mean, the only thing that these parents could have ever heard of someone moving like that was if they were possessed by a demon, and Elvis's music in the very beginning of his career, a lot of people said it was music of the devil, like the way he moved, and you know, he was writhing on the floor and shaking his hips, and you know, Elvis the Pelvis was one of his nicknames. Like, the dude would not stop shaking his pelvis, and some of it could be perceived as like sexual movements too, you know. Then all the women, of course, are going nuts, and their boyfriends are trying to control them and whatever, but it's absolutely bonkers. It's just absolute craziness. Like, everyone just abandoned their sanity, their sense of morals, everything, because imagine being in the 50s and all you really know is, you know, there's swing music, classical music, but there's nothing like what Elvis did. He shaped music. Like, he made music history, and that's why we celebrate him today as the king of rock and roll, because he completely flipped everything. He flipped the script on the entire society, on the entire culture of the day. He caused so much controversy, but he did it in such a way that he brought two worlds together, the white world and the black world. He was a white guy who sang like a white guy, but he danced like a black person. Like, it was just absolute craziness that he did it, but he did it because it was who he was. Like, he was being true to himself, and I just really, really admired seeing that throughout the movie. No matter what the cost, no matter what the odds, no matter what people thought of him, the financial, you know, problems that may happen, legal problems, he still did it because it was what made him happy. There are a lot of favorite moments for me in this movie. I'd say a couple of the big ones were just mainly all the times that he just did his own thing. He was out there enjoying himself and just letting loose, like doing the thing that made him happy and going against the Colonel's wishes, going against political stuff. Like, he was trying to break a barrier here, and he did it, and every time I saw it, it's just absolute craziness. But then I also just really love seeing the crowd's reactions to all of this. Like, he was a flashy guy, he knew how to excite the crowd, he knew what to wear, like, he just had a way with the crowd. So, like, every time he got up on stage, honestly, I would say those tons of favorite moments then, because he was on stage a lot. But I just love seeing as he progressed throughout his career, when he got to like the height of his fame, that was one of my favorite moments. Like in the 60s, around the 60s, where he was just absolutely just blowing everybody's mind. But the 50s too, like just seeing him start out and how he just brought that cultural change is really, really cool to watch as well. And yes, this is a biopic, if you didn't know that. It was pretty cool. There's a picture of him right now. Priscilla Presley was at the red carpet premiere, and she was just talking about how amazing Austin Butler was and how just, it was absolutely, he just embodied Elvis. And I think it'd be a crazy honor, but also kind of frightening to have Elvis's ex-wife show up and you know, you meet her and everything. But the historical accuracy of it, yeah, all of it, all that happened, all the stuff that happened in the movie is historically true. I mean, Priscilla herself was talking about it. You know, Lisa Marie was talking about it. I don't know if there was anything in the movie that was like she like made up. I think it all happened. And man, if that's what really happened, like just craziness, absolute craziness, was Elvis's life. I have a lot of respect for him, but at the same time, it was really sad to see a man of his talent being used like that and abused, but also like what the fame does to you, the money, the girls, like all of it, what it can do to you if you don't have a solid anchor and something in your life. A lot of emotions like watching this movie, but I absolutely loved it. And I would not be surprised if this movie won a few awards for acting and set and costume design. I mean, absolutely amazing job here. I'm going to give Elvis a 9 out of 10 Mudflaps. And before you go, drop in the comments below, what is your favorite Elvis song? And as always, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.